Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation to join you today. I love the idea of building a network. Very excited to see how this unfolds and very interested in connecting scholars at the Center for Appearance Research with all of you. And I will frequently refer to us as CAR, which is kind of an interesting acronym, but that's what we use. Center for Appearance Research is a bit of a mouthful. So I'm going to be talking today about advancing body image research and policy through cross-sectoral and industry partnerships. And I should also share that I'm relatively new as director. I've been at CAR for just over a year. So I'm going to be speaking a lot about the work of my colleagues and not at all about my own work. So happy to talk with others about my work as possible throughout the day, but I'll be featuring the work of my colleagues primarily. So this is the team. This is a photo that was taken after our Appearance Matters 10 conference, which we run an Appearance Matters conference every 2 years. This one was in June in Bristol. And this is the majority of the team. But if you're unfamiliar with CAR, we're a world-leading research group focused specifically on research on appearance-related concerns. So we're a bit unique in that we have this very clear focus. And when we think about sort of summing up what CAR does, first we focus on establishing the nature and the prevalence of appearance-related concerns. So we ask questions like, is there a problem, who's affected, and why? And then we also develop and evaluate interventions to support people with appearance-related concerns. So we ask the question, how can psychology help? So that's sort of a broad overview. We can't do this work without our funders. And here's a kind of snapshot of some of the major funders that we've had in the last 10 years or so. At the moment, I'm going to focus on funding research that's been funded by the Dove Self-Esteem Project and the VTCT Foundation. I'm happy to talk about some of the other funders as well, though. As I mentioned, we run our Appearance Matters conference every 2 years. So I'm putting in a little plug right now for our Appearance Matters 11, which will run in the summer of 2026. So please consider joining us then. And I should say that in addition to the research that we do consider it very important that we have venues like here today and Appearance Matters 10, where we can really convene people doing this kind of research in the same space to be able to connect, network, develop projects, go after funding, and so forth. And so that's another reason why we run our Appearance Matters conference. And we've been doing this conference for 20 years. So it's a pretty well-established one at this point. In Appearance Matters 10, we had about 300 attendees from 13 countries. So in addition, we have a podcast. And I'm pointing this out specifically because some of the work that I'm going to speak about today, I can only kind of cover briefly. And if you're particularly interested in anything, a lot of our work is covered in the podcast. So there will be little images that you can see attached to a project as I move through the presentation. And so this is hosted on SoundCloud. It's available for free, of course, and we've been running it for quite some time now as well. We have about 12 episodes per year. And then finally, we're also all over social media, although we have not taken on TikTok yet. So I don't know if we might get there one day. But this is where you can find us as well. And I'm sort of pointing this out because, some of what we're doing here today is talking about practical strategies for connecting. And this is sort of how we do it, right? So we have our conference, we have the podcast, and then we're also pretty active on social media. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears here and talk about the cross-sectoral partnership, a primary one through CAR. And this is funded through the VTCT Foundation, and it focuses on supporting people with a visible difference. And you can see that it spanned almost a decade at this point, so a very well-established relationship. And the sort of central problem that drives this line of research is that an estimate of 1.1 million people in the UK have a visible difference of some sort. So this is a common issue that sort of drives this stream of research. And some of the challenges that people face who have a visible difference, one includes reactions of other people. So it's not necessarily the case that someone with a visible difference necessarily has distress themselves, but the reactions of others can be quite problematic. Also, a common challenge is loss of social anonymity, stigmatization or discrimination by society, work, school, or family. Physical impacts of a visible difference, for example, scarring or contracture. And then finally, decision-making around treatments. So these are common challenges that come up through the research that the team carries out. So again, this research is founded by the VTCT Foundation, which is an independent grant-making charitable foundation working to improve the lives of those living with a visible difference. The foundation supports what's called the Appearance Collective, and that's an informal network of charitable organizations that do specifically work to support people affected by visible difference and to promote greater acceptance of diversity of appearance. At the moment, there are 27 different charities that are part of the Appearance Collective, and they really vary in size from sort of big, well-established organizations to kind of one-person operations. And this number sort of fluctuates as well as new charities may become involved and others might kind of go dormant. So there's a bit of a movement there. And this is the team that focuses on this stream of research, and it's led by Professor Diana Harcourt. And this is the sort of large group of people needed to carry out the research. Lovely group of folks. And so how did this research stream kind of develop? And first of all, I'll say that it was driven by the priorities of the Appearance Collective. So this is a bit different than the way sometimes our academic research might evolve, where researchers sort of set the kind of priorities of a stream of research. That's not the case in this stream of work. Instead, it was what do the charities need, and then the research evolved from there. The interventions and supports that have been developed through this line of research address concerns across conditions, so they're more generic rather than condition specific. So for instance, with burns, there may be PTSD associated with having a burn, and that wouldn't be something that this research addresses, because again, it's meant to sort of apply across conditions. This work has also really centrally included public and patient involvement, so people with lived experience have been part of the research from the beginning all the way through the end, which is, again, a sort of important aspect of this work. And then the key stakeholders are the charities in the Appearance Collective. So at the outset of this work in 2017, the team sort of held a priority setting event. And you can sort of see very high-tech how this priority setting was actually carried out using sticky notes and sort of, kind of low-tech version. But the set of 9 priorities were set out and sort of categorized. And that is how the work moved forward, again, with the priorities coming from the charities themselves. And so I'm going to sort of briefly sum up what emerged from the first stage of this funding, which spanned from 2017 to 2022. So in total, there were 7 interventions/resources that were developed and or evaluated across this time period, which, if we have some research brains going, 7 interventions in a 5-year period of time is quite impressive. So 27 studies were carried out with almost 4,000 participants, almost 50 papers were published, a number of workshops, invited talks, conference presentations. We had a number of students get their doctoral qualifications through this research, as well as established researchers getting promoted through this line of research. So it was an incredibly productive stage. And I'll also point out that a large amount of additional funding was generated from this work. So 1 million of which came from the same funder, so the BTCT Foundation, but 1.9 million pounds of additional grants actually came in through this work. So again, a very productive line of work. And that was only stage one. So evaluating the impact of the work, though, the research is also very important to our team. And this is just a little bit of a snapshot of evaluation work that was carried out with the charities and the Parents Collective. And so in response to the question, please indicate the ways, if any, in which this work conducted by the VTCT Foundation team at CAR has made a difference to your organization. You can see the blue is basically yes. So this work has made an impact. And you can see in the highlights, people reported it increased their understanding of research, connected them with other charities, increased their understanding of relevant issues, helped us raise awareness, and changed how they provided support. So the impact is notable and informed the work going forward into the next stage. So the current stream of research, the stage 2 started in 2022. It has another sort of 2 years left. And there are 2 main work streams. One is social media and visible difference, and the second are support and interventions. So in terms of the research objectives for the social media stream, there were 3. So to understand the experiences of individuals with appearance-altering conditions using social media, to inform strategies that encourage safe and healthy social media use, and to investigate how social media can be used to further promote acceptance of diversity in appearance in the general population. Okay. The other stream of research, the supportive interventions, also have sort of 3 main research objectives. One is to examine the effectiveness of a portfolio of interventions. Second, to implement effective interventions. And third, to collect evidence of impact. And I'll walk you through an example here of an app that is about to launch in 2025. It's been a long time coming. One of the lead researchers, if you listen to his the podcast where he was interviewed, he talks a little bit about not knowing he was going to become an app developer as a psychological researcher. So this is an app that is based on ACT, so acceptance and commitment therapy. It's openly available. It's a standalone mobile app intended to support adults with visible difference who are affected by appearance distress. And what's really amazing about this app is that as people are using the app, we can also embed a sort of data collection, obviously with their informed consent. But the data collection is sort of interwoven into the platform itself, so we're able to take advantage of that technology. And so yes, this app will be launched in 2025, and we'll see how that rolls out, but we're pretty optimistic that it'll be quite useful. As you can see from just a couple of example screenshots here, it's sort of intuitively appealing. And again, sort of thinking back to where I started, with always making sure to include people with lived experience and doing PPI means that this app has already been sort of field tested to make sure that it works and that it's kind of appealing and effective. So in addition, the team has created, again, thinking about impacts, the team has created a mailing list for health professionals. So if anyone wants to join that mailing list, here's our QR code. And the idea here is to be able to disseminate research directly to people who are working in the healthcare field with people with visible difference. In addition, the team has created a hub that hosts, or soon will host, we're about to launch this hub, the variety of interventions and supports that have been developed by CAR and tested empirically by us. And so those are going to be housed on a website within the university and be freely available to anyone to access. To do this work, an advisory group of 12 Appearance Collective charities have been involved. And 13 resources are already ready to go as soon as the hub launches. A couple more will be coming online pretty quickly after, and the team will continue to add interventions as we move forward with this work. So the idea of really making sure that these resources are widely available to anyone, and then also having a pipeline directly to health professionals has been important priorities for the team. So the team gave me sort of a set of, again, in sort of spirit of trying to provide some direct practical help or advice to you all in the room. The team wanted me to convey some of what they've learned from working with charities. One is that working with charities can be a great route to impact and help with recruitment, advisory groups, dissemination, supporting grant applications, and so forth. Many charities, though, are very small, and so they have quite limited resources, so that's important to remember as you kind of set expectations for what a relationship might look like in terms of partnering with a charity. But even if they're small, they're often led by very passionate people, highly motivated, and often have a personal connection to the topic. So deeply meaningful work. And the research team reports that this kind of work has been very rewarding and personally fulfilling as well as interesting. So all strong pluses there. Also important to note, though, that working with charities takes a lot of time. So you have to establish relationships. Their time scales are not necessarily your time scales, and so this can be an added sort of time investment. The team noted that you really want to be steer well clear of taking charities for granted, right? So respecting the work that they do, understanding their priorities, which might not always be the same as yours, being flexible, accommodating their timescales, showing appreciation. Jade, are you actually in this photo? No, maybe not.
No, I was filming.
Oh, you were? Okay. Jade is a former member of CAR. And so this is an example. Every Christmas, the team does a sort of message out to the Appearance Collective over sort of thanking them. And so Jade was the videographer for this one. So in addition to sort of showing appreciation in these sort of fun ways, and they actually often have little skits that get choreographed for this video, but making sure to sort of budget for the time and input of charities, right? So building that into your budget and not just assuming that people will volunteer their time is important. Also acknowledging them in presentations and publications as co-producing this research is important. Supporting the charities as much as possible. So members of the team are frequently asked to participate in webinars or public events. And so making that a priority to attend their events, contribute to newsletters, and so forth. Sharing knowledge and advice as appropriate, including maybe funding opportunities that a charity might not be aware of otherwise. And then also offering to connect charities to each other. So, being kind of a hub where we know of the work that's going on in these various charities, they may not know individually. So offering to connect them. And this is just a kind of a smattering of member events that CAR has participated in for different charities in the collective. And we have also gone together in joint bids with a number of charities as well. Okay, so that sort of covers the cross-sectoral partnership. I'm going to really switch gears here now and go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about industry partnerships. And one specifically. So this is work done with the Dove Self-Esteem Project. And the focus is improving the body confidence of young people around the world through evidence-based body image programs. And I strongly encourage you to listen to the podcast where Philippa Diedrichs, who is the lead principal investigator in this line of research, she goes into a lot of the history of how this partnership evolved. I'm going to try and play just a very quick clip from that.
But I want to tell you the story of how we met, because I think it already reflects some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. So I joined CAR because I wanted to be amongst a team of people who were passionate about an issue and were researching it. And CAR at the time had Appearance Matters, and it had somewhat of a brand, though we would never have said that. So Dove actually approached us, and one of their consultants had actually attended an Appearance Matters conference and recommended they reach out to us. So they sent an email to Nikki Rumsey at the time as co-director and invited us along to come, or invited her along to come to a meeting. So first of all, they knew how to find us. We had already marketed ourselves and positioned ourselves as a world-leading research centre in the area. The next thing was about collaboration, bringing people along. Nikki immediately asked me at the time if I wanted to join her at this meeting and took me along. And I remember sitting on the train to London when we were having this meeting. The next bit is we were working out what our ask would be, which is really important. We had no idea what to expect, and we were like, well, maybe we could get £20,000 to do that research in school. And then we turned up at Blackfriars Tube Station. If you've ever seen 100 Victoria Embankment, which is Unilever's main offices, it is this enormous building like a mothership. And we walked out and maybe we could up that £20,000. What we did in that meeting, though, was we sat through, and Megan Ramsey at the time, who had joined the team recently, it was 2012, so the Campaign for Real Beauty had been around for a while, the Dove Self-Esteem Project, which was named the Dove Self-Esteem Fund, had been going for a while. And most people in our field knew about Dove, and probably had mixed reactions, to be quite honest. So really loved seeing the diversity, didn't know so much about the tools that had been used and the evidence base behind them. And they had worked with experts like Nancy Betkoff and Susie Orbach and Jess Lena to create the tools, and they had an advisory board. And they had massive reach. They were partnering with lots of organisations and were already reaching several million people. And so we started off that meeting by really congratulating Dove very genuinely on the work that they had done in this area and thanking them, which is actually surprisingly not something that gets done very often. We're also very quick to critique, but we don't often reward what we see that's being done well, which I think if we were parenting, we would never do that. And it's the same when we're working with other people. But we also suggested where we thought that they could improve, because we highlighted they had huge reach and they were able to communicate with people. And they'd been working with experts on the ground. They had also been listening to young people what they needed, but they hadn't really been working directly with our field. Probably because a lot of the things and the issues that I was talking about earlier that sometimes make our work hard to find. So we said to them, what you're doing is amazing. Imagine if we could make this even better. Imagine if you could use the best programs in the world that have been proven to work and scale them up. Because you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Our field has been doing work for a couple of decades. We've got some things that don't work. There were lots of them. We've got some things that do work. You can learn from our mistakes. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's start there. And we said how we could help them. We could summarise the research for them in a way that was easy to digest and quick to digest, and don't reinvent the wheel. And imagine if you could be the leaders in body confidence education. So it was a pretty good pitch for one that was planned and a napkin on a train. And that's what we set about doing. But the first 2 years was a lot of conversations. People often ask me, how do you work with industry? Well, it takes a long time, actually, to build relationships. So the first phase was really a 2-year process of building up a relationship and our partnership. And it was a lot of consulting and strategy. We didn't have a huge formal agreement in place. It was small pockets of work. In fact, the first thing, they commissioned us to do a rapid evidence review where we summarised all of the research in 6 weeks on body image, what it is, what are the definitions of it, how do you measure it, what are the risk and protective factors, what are the interventions, what works, what doesn't. We then worked with them really quickly to actually translate all of that knowledge into a framework that they could use in the Dove Self-Esteem Project. Because when I picked up the resources, you can see that they very clearly focused on self-esteem, but they weren't targeting some of the key factors that we know are critical to influencing body image. So what we next did was shift them to an etiological approach so that they could start targeting the risk factors. Of course, we didn't necessarily use that language. We called it a curriculum development framework and said these are the curriculum themes that when you create a Dove self-esteem project tool, they should address these themes because you will then be set up to have a greater impact. In fact, they were risk factors and protective factors. What this document did is it gave guardrails to their creative and brand teams and community partners when they were creating tools. Create tools that focus on these things and do it well. The next thing we did is I developed a document called the 10 Steps to Evidence-Based Practice. And this was really clear guidance that anyone in the brand, because you might not realise that these brand teams often move around quite a lot. In fact, a lot of people at Unilever will move positions and sometimes brands every 2 years. So it's really important to have this documented so that it can be passed on time and time.
Okay, leaving you on a cliffhanger. So I hope that is helpful, though, in terms of the level of detail that Philippa talks about as this relationship evolved. Because if you're familiar with the work of CAR, you might just see where they are now, which is 11 years into the partnership. And this is very different than where they started. So if this is of interest to you, I strongly recommend listening to the whole podcast. Oh, I guess I'm getting a little bit Mac fluent here. Okay. Because she does give a lot of useful detail. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. She does give a lot of useful detail about how that relationship really evolved over the period of time. Okay, this is Professor Philippa Diederich on this left side there, and this is various members of the team. So you can, again, see it takes a lot of bodies to do this work. And the central issues that this stream of research focuses on is the amount of body dissatisfaction that we all know. Ranges from 25 to 61% of young people reporting being dissatisfied with the way they look. And that rate is actually increasing over time. So we know that body dissatisfaction predicts adverse outcomes on mental and physical health, including, for example, depression, eating pathology, self-harm, smoking, drug use. And we also know that traditional programs, which are often developed in high-income white countries, lack infrastructure and resources for scaling up and for global dissemination. So these are the sort of drivers in this body of work. So this kind of got covered a bit in the sort of bit of podcasts we listened to already, but essentially it's an academic partnership that bridges industry with the expertise of researchers at the Center for Appearance Research. And I want to stress, as you could hear from the podcast clip there, that we're using evidence-based interventions here and delivering them at scale. And that's quite different than where Dove was before this academic partnership evolved. So it's been going on for over a decade at this point, and the purpose is to believe that no one should be held back in life by low body confidence. The vision is that together they will create a body-confident world for all young people, with a mission to be leaders in the pioneering knowledge and scalable evidence-based strategies to improve body confidence in young people globally. This kind of sums up their work. To date, 20 evidence-based multi-level interventions have been developed and tested, and found to be acceptable, feasible, and effective in improving young people's body image. And these interventions can be effectively delivered by a variety of agents, from teachers to parents, youth leaders, coaches. A number of them have been online and other media platforms, and can also be self-administered. So one set of interventions, and again, there are podcasts associated with them, these interventions are led by community-based adults. So teacher-led lessons, online tools for parents, interventions led by youth groups and coaches in the case of Body Confidence Sport, which rolled out just this last year. Another set of interventions are self-administered, and so these are through books, chatbots, sorry, social media-led tools, and also online games, right? So really getting into all the different corners where youth spend time. And then third are broad-scale media interventions. I don't have any podcasts here because these are sort of our most recent interventions, and so the results are still kind of rolling out from this work. But here, the curriculum, the body image curricula, have been embedded into animated cartoons, songs and films, as well as an Instagram miniseries. So quite different levels of these different interventions. So to date, the team has conducted 18 randomized control trials and mixed method evaluations with data collected in 45 countries. And the measurement scales have also been translated and validated in a number of different languages, which is pretty important. Rather than simply just translating directly from English, the validation work has been done in a number of different languages. So £7 million in research funding has been generated through this partnership. On the research side, 54 papers and book chapters, a number of new academic collaborations and connections for the university as well. And most importantly, impact. So 114 million young people have used the tools developed through this partnership in 156 countries. So that scale is just staggering for most of us when we think about the reach of our academic research. And the work would really not be possible without partners. And here are a variety of different partners who have worked with the team over the years. And that sort of sums up that stream of research. And just in the last couple minutes here, I want to talk about how CAR has been able to do some work that has affected public policy. Most frequently, it's been providing written and oral evidence for different parliamentary committees that have been focused on body image. And so here are a couple of examples. Dr. Amy Slater and Professor Philippa Diedrichs have both been involved in that work. And then another example of work that CAR has done to inform public policy has been helping Alopecia UK, which led this effort to create a charter which informs practice on wig provision for people with alopecia. So how often wigs should be made available, and so forth. That is all part of the charter, and the work that CAR has done has been useful in providing that empirical base for the charter itself. So those are a couple of examples. I'm just going to close here. I know I'm a little bit close on time, with some global comments for building partnerships and collaborations. So having a reputation for excellent scholarship is pretty essential. As Philippa noted, Dove approached CAR. So they were aware of CAR, and that was sort of the foundation for that partnership. Having a web and social media presence, so as I noted at the beginning of the talk, that is a priority of CAR, to make sure that we are out there disseminating research into these conversations. Providing media interviews, same kind of concept there. It's a particularly useful way to bring evidence into the public sphere. Journalists are obviously not specialists, and so relying on us to provide that information that then gets disseminated much more broadly than our academic publications. Making presentations to lay audiences, so getting out into community settings is a great way to make these kinds of connections. Attending conferences, put in another plug for AM 11, and other relevant events like this one today is a great opportunity for networking and meeting people. And also, finally, building relationships within and outside of academia. So all of this has been pretty essential for CAR to be able to do the work that we've been doing for the last 30 years. So thank you very much for your time. And I think we're doing some questions. Is that right?
We have time for one question, and then we'll continue on at the tea break and panel discussion then, Alicia. Yeah. So if anyone has a question, we're more than happy to take them.
And apologies if I ran over time. I think I
Oh,
ran
yeah,
over
no,
the-
you're
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
So
perfect.
sorry.
Thank you much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very impressive. What percentage of the appearance issues is your centre dealing with that would be, congenital appearance issues versus acquired? You mentioned burns, for example, and the stress of that, but you also have some icons there for acquired appearance-related things.
I would say I'm not sure what the percentage is because so the supports and interventions are meant to go across conditions. So we don't really divide it up in that fashion, but we definitely cover that range of congenital and acquired. Yeah.
Because I can imagine the impact on the individual who, say, was born with something versus suddenly having to cope in, say, their midlife or even teenage years can be quite distinct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, and happy to chat more as we unfold the day.
Yeah, and at the panel discussion as well. Thank you so much.